Hello, and welcome back to my boyfriend's channel for a part 4. That's right, we finally made it to a series that has more than one part. Congrats to us, I guess. So, in case you are new here, I review movies that are older than my parents, and that most people have seen, or at least know about, but here we are today going on a complete downward spiral where we start off with a great movie and just work our way down, in my opinion. So, the first one we're talking about today is probably one of the best movies I've ever seen, ever, which is The Shawshank Redemption. So this movie is basically it's Morgan Freeman pretty much illustrating or narrating life in prison for another character named Andy. So Andy is sent to prison for the murder of his wife and her lover, that he was found guilty of, though he swears he didn't do it. He's innocent, but everyone in Shawshank is innocent. Is like a common thing they say. So he gets the 2 life sentences, which I believe a life sentence is 25 years, so he got 50 years in prison. And this movie starts out in, I think, 1947. Yeah, 1947. And that's how the movie starts. It shows a little bit of his trial, showing some scenes of him where he's outside of the lover's house or whatever, and it's kind of leaning towards that he probably did do it, but at that point you're not really sure. He says he's innocent, and he's kind of like the main focus. So you meet Red, which is Morgan Freeman's character, and he is constantly asked if he believes he has changed, and he always gives like a BS answer of like, yeah, I definitely feel like I'm a different person now. And they always reject him for parole, so he's kind of just fed up with it. He knows that they're not going to let him out. And he's also in there for murder. Most of the people in here are in here for pretty serious things like that. So when it shows Andy first get to prison, you have a lot of the like main inmates that he interacts with Red, making bets with cigarettes about which person will break first. They call them fish, because I guess they're brand new, like new meat, like fresh meat. So they all make bets on who they think is going to cry, and Red bets on Andy. And I think Hayworth is the guy's name, but he bets on this like bigger, like chubby dude. And they get into their cells, and then they all start kind of like teasing the new guys, and eventually the bigger dude ends up breaking. And by crying and saying like, I don't need to be here, I'm wrongly accused, let me out, the inmates actually pick him out and beat the crap out of him. And so when they get up the next morning, they're like, hey, he won or whatever. They're like, yeah, how'd my champion do? He actually died from that. No one knew that he was there. All the guards and nurses had already like left. So he literally bled out like all night and died. So kind of gives way to like the prison inmate violence, like the corruption of power, I guess you would say, of how they treat the inmates or whatever. So Andy gets like his first little meal or whatever. There's like worms in it, and then the guy next to him named Brooks is like, oh, can I have that worm? And he gives it to a little bird he keeps in his pocket, and it's cute. I think he names it Jake. I'm not sure about that, I don't remember. So I guess a month or 2 goes by, and Andy asks Red to get him a rock hammer. And a rock hammer is pretty pathetic looking. It looks kind of like the little hammer the doctor hits you with on the knee whenever they're testing your reflexes. But Red's the guy that, like, that's what he does. He gets people shit when they're in prison. So he gets him this hammer because he's like, I like to play with minerals. I'm stuck here for the rest of my life. I might as well pick up a hobby. So he makes little chess pieces out of, like, different types of rocks is kind of, like, what he wants the hammer for. So after this happens, Andy is, like, beat up. Apparently on a daily constant basis, he is just beaten by this little group. They're like, he calls them the sisters. And they beat him. They possibly do sexual things to him. It is prison, but it doesn't show it. But it kind of leans towards that way. And yeah. So after that, they have to fix a license plate building, or at least they're like, we need volunteers to come or whatever. Red pretty much rigs it to where him and all his friends get to go fix this roof. And when they do that, and they're there for like a month, Andy overhears one of the officers talking about how his sister or brother or something was like a billionaire and died and left him like $32,000. And he's like, I'm gonna have to like lose half of it to taxes. And Andy goes up to him and is like, if you give it to your wife as a one-time gift, you won't have to pay taxes on it because it's a gift. And he pretty much like shows off that he was an accountant beforehand and helps with this happening. And he said, but I'll help you with this paperwork if you give all my guys like 3 beers each or whatever on our last day, which he does. It's pretty much what makes him friends, because he felt like human again, I guess is the best way to describe it. So he's very happy with doing that, and everyone gets their beers. So after this, as kind of like I guess a gift, Red gives him this poster of Rita Hayworth. I don't know who that is, because this is like the 40s, maybe the 50s at this point in time, but like a movie star. Because he's like, I need a poster of that girl, and he gets him one, but he doesn't charge him for it. As kind of like, hey, we're friends now type of thing, I guess. So he's got this big poster on his wall of a girl. And after this happens, he gets beat up again, and he got beat so bad that he ends up in an infirmary for like a month. And when he gets out, like, no one ever messes with him again. And the guy Boggs, I guess that's the sister's person name, the guy that beat him up all the time, he was beaten up by a guard, like, so bad that he's paralyzed, and he's not even in that prison anymore. He had to get transferred. So after that, like, no one messes with Andy anymore, because they're like, stuff happens. And then after that, because they feel bad, because he's their friend now, kind of, they go out and they look for nice rocks for him so that he can make his chess pieces that he likes. So they do a room check at this point, which didn't seem like really an important part until like later on in the movie. They do a room check, and they see the poster, they see the rocks, they don't really think much of it. He even sees that there's a Bible in his room, the warden, and he's like, I'm glad you're reading that, like, I'm glad that this means you're trying to change or whatever. And they have like a really civil conversation. And after that, he has Andy come to his office. He tells him, I want you to move from doing laundry to being in the library. I want you to help Brooks, the guy with the bird. I want you to help him, kind of like as a treat for being like good, I guess. So he does that, and while he's in there, another guard asks for financial advice. He wants to set up like a life savings for his kid or something. And it just slowly kind of turns into Andy doing like everyone's taxes, anything legal-wise. Instead of having to go and pay someone to do it, they just have this prisoner do it for free. And he ends up for like years doing like everyone's taxes. He does other people's taxes from like different prisons. They'll come and play like football at this prison, and he'll do theirs. Anything that involves that. And when he does that, he's also like sending letters out to the state government to be like, hey, we need more money for books and stuff. And they basically let him because he's helping out the prison so much. So after this, Mr. Brooks, the guy, he pulls a knife on one of their friends, and they're like, why are you doing this? He's like, they're going to send me away or whatever. And we realize afterwards that he's getting released on probation. And he doesn't want to leave because he's so used to living in prison. He was there for like 50 years. He doesn't know how to be a regular person anymore. So he gets let out. He works at a grocery store. He has a little house. Everyone's kind of mean to him. He doesn't feel like he has his way. So he ends up commits S-word because he can't handle it anymore. And yeah. So after Andy has been sending these letters out once a week for 6 years, they finally get like $500 or something a year donated to them. And he's like, that's not enough. Now I gotta send them 2 letters a week because we need to like really help. And he's also getting charities to like give them like leftover books and stuff. Like he basically has like a real library going at this point. Red has another parole type hearing where they again don't let him, and because of that, Andy gives him a harmonica because he talked about earlier liking to play the harmonica. So he gets him a harmonica because they're twins. After this, the warden has like the brilliant idea to have these prison people do basically slave labor for free. People would do it for like real cheap, hire these prisoners to come do work for them, and it was putting a lot of people out of business. So he was like taking money from people who were bribing him to not have the prisoners come and help, basically. And Andy was their accountant, so he was like watching all this happen, and he was money laundering, and he would put it into a fake person's account. He even told Red, like, oh, I made up this fake person, and I have all the money going into accounts for him and coming out and moving to other ones. I don't really know how money laundering works, but, like, he did stuff like that. And he's like, wow, so if they tried to arrest someone, they'd arrest this fake person. He's like, yeah, it's all good, so I won't get in trouble. And they're like, oh, okay. So after this, it talks about this character named Tommy. Tommy's not there very long, but he is like a greaser, think of it like that. Like Danny Zuko or something. And he's there, and he really wants to get his GED. He starts out as like a petty thief or whatever. He's been in every prison you can think of, but he wants to get his GED. He has a daughter. He wants to get his life together when he gets out. So he gets under like Andy's wing, and he's starting to teach him his grades and stuff, and doing his GED and all this junk. And so he starts teaching, and he finally tells Andy, like, hey, I wanted to let you know there's this guy that was in my prison cell. He was a big dude. He was real scary. And I asked him once, because he'd always talk about murder or whatever, so I'd ask him, have you ever killed anyone? He goes, oh yeah, I'd stalk people, and I found this one guy, and I killed him, and I killed his mistress or whatever. And the best part about it is the fact that they blamed the murder on her husband, so I got away with it. And then, like, the story, because it's like a golf pro, is like the guy, and Andy's just listening like, oh my god, he knows that who actually did it. Like, and that's when you find out he didn't actually kill his wife or anything. Like, he was put in there wrongfully. So he goes to the warden, he's like, you gotta hear the story, like, I'm innocent, he can actually testify for me, like, this is ridiculous, like, oh my god, like, he's so excited for it. And when he's talking to the warden just throws him into solitary. He's just like, yeah, you go, you're crazy, go away. So he does that, and the warden actually gets Tommy to, like, come kind of out of the prison, I think, and he's asking him, like, did this actually happen? Are you telling the truth? Yeah. He's like, yeah, I did. Like, it's really, he's like, you testify for him? And he's like, of course he would. He goes, okay, that's what I thought. And has, like, a sniper person shoot him, like, and he was just like, oh, he tried running away. That's why. When in reality, it's like, we all know he just wanted him gone so that he could keep Andy there to money launder, which sucks. And you find out that Andy also passed his GED. It very much reminded me of Pennsatucky, if you've seen Orange is the New Black, that whole thing with Tasty, where it's like, I'm not smart enough to get it, doesn't want to try, ends up passing the GED, but dies, so it didn't matter. It reminds me a lot of that. Like, they probably ripped that off of Shawshank. But, yeah, so Andy, when he finally gets out of the solitary, because I think he's been there for another month after Tommy dies, he goes, just keeps him in there for another month. He tries to quit being the accountant, and they won't let him. So when he finally does get out, he's telling Red about this town in Mexico named Zihuatanejo. And yes, I wrote that how it sounds and not how it's spelled. But Zihuatanejo, how he wants to live there when he finally escapes. Like, if he ever gets to, like, leave, he wants to go there and, like, own a boat and live on the beach and stuff. And so, after Tommy dies, he starts acting kind of weird and distant. He asks Hayworth for some rope. He asks Red, like, hey, if you ever get out of here for any reason, please go to, like, this very specific patch of land, look for a tree. Under that tree, you'll find a rock that clearly doesn't need to be there, and I want you to keep what's under that rock. Like, if you ever get out, like, please do that. And then Andy's just missing the next day when they do, like, a roll call or whatever. He's missing, and they're like, what's going on? They're like, you better be dead. Everyone was already thinking he may have been a little suicidal, and he wasn't, because he just wasn't there. They knock down that poster of the girl, and there's a big tunnel. This is 19 years later, so it took him about 19 years, maybe a little less, to tunnel his way out of his cell into, like, the sewer area, break open one of the sewer lines, crawl a mile in this, like, crap-infested water to freedom. They said the only thing that they found when they searched was, like, his clothes, a bar of soap, and then it was just gone. A thunderstorm was going on when this happened, so no one heard any of the noises. All his scent would be gone. The dogs couldn't smell him. He was free. All the money that he laundered, he had set up, like, an actual birth certificate, social security for this person that doesn't exist. He now became that person, went to these banks, got the $370,000 from them, and just went to Mexico. And the warden actually, like, he commits S-word because he's like, I'm going to go to jail, otherwise these people are going to hurt me if I get sent to jail. The guard that beat up everyone got arrested. Like, he pretty much, like, wrote to, I think, the banks and ratted all of them out for the money laundering, but he was already gone. And when you open up his Bible, he mailed it to the warden, you open it up, that was where the little hammer was. Like, the pages were cut out and the hammer was in the Bible the whole time. He was never actually reading it. So, everyone gets arrested after that. They ask Red, again, if he thinks he's ready for parole, and he gives the most sassy, like, it doesn't matter what I say, you're gonna keep me in here forever, you don't care if I've changed you, it's just a made-up word, like, just so that people in suits can feel better about themselves. Like, I'm the same person I've always been, like, I can regret what I've done, but there's nothing I can do to get me out of here, and they actually give him parole. So, he gets out, he has the same job, same bedroom that Brooks was in, and he kind of thinks about, like, Andy, and he goes to that area and he finds the rock and he finds what's underneath it, and it's like a little lunchbox. You open the lunchbox, it has an envelope. The envelope has like a bunch of money in it. I don't know. It's got money in it. It's got a letter saying, like, if you've come this far, then are you willing to come any further? Basically saying, like, do you remember the name of the town in Mexico that I live in? And he did. And so he quits his job, carves his name where it said Brooks was here. He writes, like, Red was too. Gets all the way to Mexico, and the movie ends with him being on the beach with his friend. Before this, the only thing I knew about Shawshank was, like, the Family Guy spoof of it. So when it came to that part, I was like, I wouldn't have remembered the name of that town either, so that's pretty impressive. But this movie was so freaking good. Like, out of all of the movies on this list, if you don't watch this one or Goodfellas, like, it would be this one. Because this is such a good freaking movie. And I give it a 9 out of 10 because I love it so much, and I can't believe I haven't watched it before. It's like all these prison or movies or with, like, crime people seem to be doing, like, the best. Like, honestly, like, I really like that one. I really like Goodfellas. Those are the two I would recommend to people at this point. So, slightly going down a pedestal, the next movie is Taxi Driver. And if you have seen the movie The Joker with Joaquin Phoenix, I definitely would recommend watching this one because this is literally the same movie. Like, if you were to take out the parts about him wanting to be a comedian and desperate wanting to get on a talk show, this is literally the same movie as The Joker. So, the movie opens up with Travis, which is Robert De Niro. And he's applying to drive taxi. He gives him all his, like, information, says I was in the Marines and all this junk, and gets his taxi stuff. Then it shows a little snip of him in, like, a, Justin said it was called a snuff movie. I don't know what else to call it. But, like, a movie theater where they show, like, sexual movies. And it shows him stalking this girl named Betsy. He stalks her at her job. She campaigns for this dude who wants to be president. He drives by. It shows her and her friends kind of like, that taxi driver's, like, staring at us. And eventually one day, he goes in there and, like, tries to, like, ask her out or whatever, but he's being real weird, but she still says yes and everything, because he's like, I want to volunteer, but it's like he didn't really care about volunteering. And at one point, he runs into Jodie Foster many of times throughout this. I don't remember the exact order, but there was a time that she got in his cab, and her pimp, like, gives him a $20 bill, and is like, just pretend you didn't remember any of this. And that constantly happens where she, like, runs into him, and he's just kind of, like, watching her. And she's, like, 13. I just want to point that out. Like, you know, she's a pimp, so you know what she's doing, but she's 13. And he's just kind of, like, concerned every time he sees her. Like, this isn't what she wants to be doing. But he goes on his date with Betsy. They have, like, coffee and pie. Talks about how he hates her coworker, thinks he's kind of creepy. They go on a second date where he takes her to that freaking movie theater. And she gets very mad and is like, don't come around me anymore. I don't like that kind of stuff. We clearly don't have the same, like, interests. You need to leave. Leave me alone. And continues to ignore him. And so he shows up at her campaign job, causes a big scene, gets kicked out. They're going to call the police on him and all this junk. So it shows him driving another person in his taxi. And this person's like, leave the meter running, I'll pay you, I don't care, but I need you to sit here and watch. And it's like this girl in a window, and he's like, that's my wife, but that's not my house, if you know what I mean. And he's like, I'm a killer. Does that make me crazy? And he's just kind of staring at him like, and he's very hostile, and it's It's like the second movie in a row I watched where someone's trying to kill a cheating spouse. So, and then after that, he goes and talks to his friends that are other cab drivers, and he asks any of them if they have a gun or they have a way to get a gun because he wants to buy one. And he's like, yeah, I got a dude, and that's kind of as far as that goes. But he's asking him, like, are you suicidal? Are you okay? Are you fine? And he's like, yeah, I'm fine, basically. I just want to have one, you know? So after that, it shows Palantine, which is the person running for president, giving an interview on TV. And Travis is just, like, eating food, watching him, because he's like, well, Betsy likes him, so obviously he's a good dude. Basically. And then he sees Jodie Foster again. It shows, like, it constantly goes to scenes where he's just driving his cab. But he sees her again. She walks out in front of his cab. He nearly hits her, and then he just kind of low-key follows her until she turns off on a different street, and then he keeps going. And after that, it shows him buying the gun from the traveling salesman who sells a bunch of different stuff, not just guns. I think he buys, like, 4 or 5 guns. And it shows him slowly be like, I need to get in shape, doing all these push-ups and stuff, eating certain things, trying to make himself, like, in better shape, basically. And he goes to the Palantine guy's rally and sees, like, a Secret Service member or something, and he asks him, like, how do you think I become, like, a Secret Service person? I think I'd be real good at it. And he's very suspicious. And he's like, just give me your name and stuff. And so he gives him a fake name, because his name is, like, Travis Bickle, and he gives him the name Henry Crinkle or something. Like, a very close but fake name. And gives him, like, a fake address and all this stuff. Because, like, that's probably what anyone would do if they were being sketchy and asked, like, hey, what's your name and address? And the thing is, he drove Palantine or whatever in his cab at one point, because he was like, yeah, my girlfriend's campaigning for you. And he's just like, yeah, he's like, you're a great guy, you should win or whatever. So, like, he's met the dude, like, I'm sure he doesn't remember him, and he's showing up at his rallies and stuff. It's very clear what it's leading to him doing. Like I said, if you've seen the Joker movie. But he starts practicing, like, how he would talk to people in the mirror, if they were to, like, mess around with him or upset him in some way. He makes all these, like, little devices where he can, like, go, like, and it, like, the gun shoots in his hand and stuff. And he, like, glues a knife to his shoes, so, like, if he needs to grab it. And then after that, he, shoots a robber. Someone was robbing a grocery store, and he pulls out a gun and just shoots him. And then he's like, I don't have a permit for this gun. So the shopkeeper's like, give it here. All right, I got this. And, like, he runs out. So he's officially killed someone. Or at least shot him. We don't know if he dies. Probably does. So after that, he writes his parents a letter or a postcard or something. And he's like, hey, I'm doing great. I have this girlfriend who's awesome. I'm in the Secret Service now. And it's like, because Betsy and him had broken up after, like, one date, if they were even dating at that point. And obviously he's not in the Secret Service. You can start to see that he's a little bit delusional. Like, he's not all there. And after that, he actually goes up to the pimp guy named Sport and tries to buy time with Jodie Foster's character's name is Iris. And so she's being her profession, thinking that's what he wants. And he's like, no, I don't want you to do any of that. I just want to know why you're doing this. Like, how old are you? Are you really 13? Like, don't be like this. I'm trying to help you. Like, come with me to dinner tomorrow. I'll give you money for it or whatever. But, like, I want to make sure you're okay. I want to help you get out of this, basically. And she doesn't want to give up that lifestyle. She's like, I hate my parents. And in the best argument I've ever heard in a movie, she was literally like, oh, I'm a Libra, and Sport's a Libra. So that's why we get along. I think the people who are the best lovers are Cancers, and my family are a bunch of air signs, and that's why we don't get along. And I think you're a Scorpio. You're acting like a real Scorpio right now. Which is me to a plus. Except that Libra is an air sign, so I don't know if that's supposed to be like, oh, my parents and me don't get along because we're all air signs, which would be the exact opposite in theory. If you were all air signs, you would get along, but that's a different story. But that's her argument for, like, why she doesn't want to leave. And she goes back to Sport, and sexual things happen. She's 13. It's very uncomfortable to watch. But he ends up leaving her money in, like, an envelope. He mails it to, I think, her parents. And then he shaves his head into, like, a little mohawk. And he rips up an outfit and, like, puts a new one together. And he burns all these flowers he had in his apartment that he had sent to Betsy over time. And she had said rejected them, and they came back to him. And so he shows up at Palatine's rally and attempts to shoot and fails. Like, they see him, they think he's sketchy, they see him reaching for the gun, and they chase him away. So it's like a failed assassination attempt, basically. And after that, he's so angry that he messed up that he tries to go back for Iris. He shoots, like, the guardsman, he shoots the pimp guy, he shoots the customer that she's with. He kills, like, all these people. And the police show up, and he gets arrested, obviously. He committed, like, 3 different murders, and he ends up actually getting shot and put in a coma. And then it shows, like, a postcard to him from the parents' point of view, like, Iris's family, where it's like, we're so sorry we didn't get to meet you. Like, if you ever come to Pennsylvania, like, we would love to have you over. Like, thank you so much for saving our daughter. She's back in school. Everything's great. And you see, like, this wall of newspaper articles saying how he's this big hero because he killed this, like, child herder, bad, like, it's pimp, so they're not really liked. They also carried guns and stuff, and they had children as their hooker people. And so people were pretty happy that they were gone and dead, and he looked like basically a hero because of it, and not just a mentally unstable person who spends the entire movie practicing murdering a guy running for president, who ends up actually becoming president, because it shows Betsy get in his cab, and they're talking about it, and she's just like, yeah, he's going to be in office in 17 days, and he lets her out of the cab, and she's like, hey, how much does this cost? And he's like, nah, you're good, and drives away. And that's basically how the movie ends. Like, he doesn't get punished for the things he did. He's seen as a hero. He still gets to be a taxi driver, and I guess, I don't know. But I gave it a 6 out of 10. Not my favorite. Murder is bad, okay? Which leading into murder. Oh my god. The next one is Natural Born Killers. And if you've made it this far and you're done with crime movies, this is the worst one probably ever gonna be on any of these lists, so bear with me. Because the opening scene in this movie is literally a diner getting robbed, everyone's getting stabbed, everyone dies except, like, one person. If I wanted to sum up this movie, the shortest that I could would literally be this. It's Woody Harrelson and that chick from What's Eating Gilbert Grape. I don't know her name. Basically, they are like Bonnie and Clyde if all they did was murder people instead of robbing. Go to, like, random cities, kill a bunch of people, will always leave one witness so that people can talk about them, and this movie basically just shows that journey. And then you throw in, like, Robert Downey Jr. is kind of like Chris Hansen, where he has, like, a documentary series, and he wants to interview them while they're in prison once they get captured. And crap happens from there, because... And the thing with this movie is it's so artsy. There's literally a scene where it's supposed to be giving her backstory about how crappy her childhood was, how her father was, like, sexually abusing her, and her mom let it happen, and all this junk, and, like, her boyfriend goes to jail for stealing a car, and then, like, a tornado comes, and he steals a horse, and he escapes, and they go and murder her family, let her brother go, and they just drive off together. But they set it up kind of like a Brady Bunch mocking television series from, like, the 60s or 70s, where everything they say, even though it's awful what they're saying, but there's, like, a laugh track. It was weird to watch, like, and anytime something happens, these two, it, like, shows, like, scenes in the background of, like, things that happened earlier. Their awful childhoods are pretty much laughed at. They're made to be funny. It shows a scene where they killed this Native American man who was actually really nice to them and helping, but because it's Mickey and Mallory are their names. But because Mickey has, like, a weird nightmare about his family, he ends up murdering this Native American guy. And she's like, why would you do that? He was so helpful to us. And he's just like, I don't know. I don't know. Bad dreams happen. Stuff happens. And that's basically, like, they're both insane. Clearly. Especially her. But they're both insane. Like, honestly, that's just the easiest way to wrap this up, is that they literally, anytime they go somewhere, if anyone's nice to them, they kill them. If anyone's rude to them, they kill them. There's not really any way to sum it up any less than that, but, you know, they kill a mechanic, they take hostages, and they kill them. And they finally get caught by this guy named Scat Nettie, who also is, like, a crooked cop, because he kills this, like, hooker chick that he had at one point. But they end up getting put in jail, and then it's, like, a year later. They had already had the Robert Downey Jr. special. His name was, like, Wayne something. But he already had his special. He wants to interview them, like, a live interview, and it's going to take place right after the Super Bowl, where he wants to interview Mickey before he gets transferred to a different prison, because they want to separate them, because them being in this prison, they are still killing people. Like, their guards, other prisoners and stuff, they're like, we need to separate them, they're too much. Like, it's causing this entire prison to, like, fall apart. So, he goes in there, and he interviews them. Well, he interviews Mickey. Mallory's, like, stuck in herself. Mallory is being harassed by Scat Nettie, because he's the one that's supposed to be doing the transfer. He wants to, like, talk to Mallory at this point. But he goes in there, and he's kind of all feely and stuff, and of course that's not going to go well, because literally time anyone does anything to these people, they just murder them. But while this is happening, Mickey is talking to Wayne, and he's interviewing him, and a riot breaks out in the prison because of something that Mickey said, because it's being broadcast throughout the entire prison, where he's talking about, he's like, well, we're natural born killers, like, this is just who we are, this is who we were born to be. We didn't become this, we were already this. And so everyone in the prison just starts like, F it, we just want to start hurting each other. Which, I can't describe how stupid the guards are in this movie. But they all decide, let's go take care of that and leave this dude who's like a huge serial killer, mass murderer, whatever. Leave him in here with this television crew. So they do. And of course, he knocks out like one guard, takes the gun, starts shooting everyone in there. And Wayne's, like, on his side, like, oh, let's get all these people, you know, and they kind of just join together. Everyone in this prison's just shooting each other. The warden is Tommy Lee Jones, and he's just like, we can't let them win, we gotta get our stuff together. But, like, oh my goodness. So basically, they take their hostage, it's not a real hostage, but they make their hostage Wayne. And they're like, we'll shoot him, he's a television personality, people are gonna want him alive. They get out the prison, the warden's kind of like, we are effed. He ends up probably getting murdered because the prisoners take him. And he's just kind of like crowd surfed, and then you just hear screaming. But they get away. It's just the three of them at that point, because everyone else has pretty much been murdered at that. And they get to the woods or whatever, and he's so obsessed with being on television. Like, he's a married dude who's also cheating on his wife. Like, I just want to point out, that's like the common theme in all three of these movies, is someone in this movie is cheating on their spouse. But, he's like literally lost it at this point. He's like, I'm gonna leave my wife for this other chick that I'm seeing, and he's like so obsessed with being on TV that he's still filming them, talking about like, this is gonna air at some point, and then they're like angling the camera, they're like, alright, we have to kill you now. And he's like, why? I'm helping you. And they're like, well, because this is just kind of what we do, and we gotta do something or no one's gonna think we did anything. And he's like, well, you always leave a witness. They're like, yeah, your camera's our witness. Like, who didn't see that coming? Really. But they kill him, and it shows them later on have like 2 kids, and she's pregnant, and it's like the whole movie is like green screens. Like, I think it's supposed to look poorly done, but it's like green screen, and they're just like in a van, like, yay! Like, they had time to somehow pop out like 2 kids and be pregnant with the 3rd one. Still haven't been caught. Everyone's dead. Scat Nettie gets stabbed by Mallory, and then she gets shot in the face. That's pretty much what Mickey does as soon as he deals with the TV crew. He runs into her cell, they reunite, they kill him, and then they keep going. But my god, everyone in this movie pretty much just dies. It very much fits in with the title, but I gave that a 5 out of 10. It's not the worst movie I've seen, but literally, like, every person that tries to help them. Like, pharmacy dude who's like, this is where the anti-venom is because they get bit by rattlesnakes at one point. Oh, kill him. It's a bad movie. But stylistic-wise, it's interesting. But those are my 3, I guess, crime movies, rated R movies. They all involve the boom booms. But yeah, and if you like these type of videos, quarantine is definitely making it a lot easier for me to do them. Our next one is actually going to be taking up the next 22 hours of my life. There's the hint. Because I gotta watch them all back to back. It's a trilogy. It might be considered the best trilogy ever by my boyfriend. But we will see you next time.